Okay, hope that really is happening. I've tried that before and then I didn't record and it was a disaster. So welcome everybody. It's 2024 and we're back and it's very exciting. And we've got some lovely things lined up. People that are sharing their work and their thinking and their struggles. And it's lovely because it makes us feel like a community and not stuck on our own, beating away at whatever we're doing. So welcome. And I'm sure the ANC is the same. So we've got two people that are going to share their work today. Jessie Brett, who's in Wales, but has been doing a lot of work in Ethiopia in integrated dance, and we know very little to nothing about that work. So we're so excited to hear about that. And then Riina, who's going to share her work around intellectual disability. So we're going to start with Jessie. Thank you for being with us. You're new, so maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. And then you've got a little video you want us to show as well. Or do you want us to start with the video and then you'll talk, please? What's best for you?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit and then, yeah, Riina, you're going to share my video for me. Fingers crossed. Yeah, so I am Jessie Brett and I have a company called Humans Move, which is a recent company. I set it up in 2021, but it just builds on the work that I've been doing, you know, for the last 10 years or more. So yeah, Humans Move is in Wales. So I'm in Wales now. And we're kind of just we're really like investigating what we should do right now, actually. And as well as like we're making work. But there's a lot of kind of trying to just understand what can I do here is my question, you know, like how can I be useful here? But previously, so about I think it's like a year and 9 months ago, I moved back from Ethiopia, and I was living in Ethiopia for like 7 years, 6-7 years, based there, and then longer coming and going. And I just really so since 2012, I really integrated myself into the dance world there, the contemporary dance world, which is a small little bubble, and danced with quite a few kind of for those 10 years kind of worked with a lot of I would say like the core the core artists in Ethiopia. And towards the end of, so in around 2018, I set up a training for disabled dance, for physically disabled dancers in Addis Ababa. And now that continues to go on. It's called Addis Guzo Dance Group. And they train twice a week. And during my last year there, I trained up one of the students to become a teacher. He's disabled, and now somebody has taken my role, and it continues to grow. And so Humans Move now, we work in Wales, but we also are working with my beloved friends in Ethiopia, and Addis Guzo Dance Group. So yeah, I thought I'd share my little film, because in that little film I piloted a little exchange as part of an R&D grant that we had last year. It was a very small exchange online. It was just to kind of play with the idea of how that would be, and to work out how to actually do it better in the future. So you get to see kind of some work in Wales and some work in Ethiopia. So I thought that, well, me talking to them online in Ethiopia, but yeah. Should we just play that and then I will be done, I think. Probably going on and on and on. And then we just thank Riina for, yay. So go from the beginning. Yeah, from the... So we work with disabled and non-disabled dancers. We've been working on an R&D to identify disabled dancers in Wales who are wanting to work professionally. So I toured around Wales and visited loads of different community groups to see if there was talent around and people who might be able to join Humans Move projects and this R&D. In this project, I really wanted to explore telling a story. I wanted to make a show for families. I wanted to try out puppetry, so all the dancers becoming puppeteers, telling a story through movement, and see how I could make my work more narrative.
Should they be over and around us so that we can like interact?
Yeah.
Keep them in the same place.
1, 2, and then let's stretch up 3, 4. As Humans Move, we have this connection with Ethiopia. 5, 6, beautiful, and synchronicity, and around 7, 8. Oh, this is nostalgic. It was important for me to bring them into the process because they are so inspiring and they have this amazing quality and feeling to the way that they move, the way that they create, and the way that they go about life. They really encapsulate this playfulness that I find so important. I worked with the dancers in Ethiopia online. I set tasks to the group in Wales and the group in Ethiopia. So we're going to do that and then we're going to come back together and reflect on it afterwards. The group in Ethiopia, when I mentioned shadow puppetry, really kind of lit up and got enthusiastic about it.
በፐፔቶቹ ብቻ ነው ሻዶ አርቱ የሚሰራው ወይ ደግሞ እኛ
ሁለት
ሙሉ ለሙሉ
ፐፔቶቹ አሉ and then dancer. So there's Abu Dhabi, it's like Abu Dhabi ይሆናል ከኋላ ያለ spot lights የምንላቸው.
They went off and created their own story of shadow puppetry, which was beautiful, and they got further in the shadow puppetry than we did. So we were more working with the actual puppet, Taraku.
Right, Taraku? He's like,
I think that you can I moved back from Ethiopia a year and a half ago. Having had this really deep relationship with Ethiopia and Ethiopian people, it also led me to understand a lot more about people who are from Ethiopia who are here.
how do you feel about the train? Should we get on the train?
I think, Riina, you can stop it now if you want to. Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's my time taken up. So that's me, and that's the group Adiskuzo that I set up. That's the studio that that was made for us, and yeah, that's me. So we can talk more later. So thank you.
So is there any questions that you have for Jessie immediately, or if not, we can save them and come back to them in a little while. I've got loads, but I will hold then. Sarah Lee.
Sarah, we can't hear you. Type it in. Type a question to us.
Type your message in the chat. Sorry. Okay, how to spell the name of the company in Ethiopia, Jessie?
Shall I type it into the chat? So it's ADDIS, Addis, as in Addis Ababa, and Guzo, as in journey. So it's like new journey. So we're the NGO who support the group is called Addis Guzo, and then we're Addis Guzo Dance Group. I mean, they are. I'm not anymore. Yeah. So, yeah, we used to have a Facebook. I don't think they currently have one. But yeah, they have a website as Addis Guzo, the NGO, and everything. So they're really amazing what they do.
Right. So that's super. And if you save other questions or they might percolate. Oh, sorry, Sarah Lee, did you have? No. Okay. Lovely. So, Jessie, that's opened up a thing that maybe most of us don't know about and really interesting to hear. And I'm sure want to hear more about. But let's shift. And I mean, from the video, it is very clear that you're working with people with lots of different kinds of disability. Which is really interesting. And I think I'm going to be really interested in hearing how you do that, how you, choreograph across so many different disabilities. So, but let's go to Riina. But first, I'm going to hand over to Leanne, maybe to frame this.
Hi, hi everyone. I just wanted to, before we start, just really acknowledge Cindy, who's in Ireland. And I met Cindy at the Body Moves Festival in Johannesburg 2 years ago. And then again this year. And I'm just so really, really delighted that you're here and that you've joined us, and that I hope there'll be space for you to also share your work with us. So just really wanted to acknowledge that you've joined us. So thanks, Cindy.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to tell you a little bit about what's going on in Ireland, but maybe at the end of the meeting. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So, it's my privilege to introduce Riina, who has been with us for a long time, and I'm trying to get the Finnish way of saying it, and I know Verva taught me to go Riina, so I hope I'm getting it right. But Riina has been with us since the beginning, and it's really, for me, and I'm sure for Yvette and for all of us, a great privilege to listen to your work. You've spoken a little bit about it, but Riina is a doctoral student at Uni Arts in Helsinki. And I can't pronounce the name of her company, so I'm going to ask her to do that a little bit later. But she's been working with dancers with special needs since 2010, and directed a dance club for children and youth, which was the basis of the company. But the company's still going, and it works on a production sort of, project-based, production by production, and most of the dancers have now grown up. She's particularly interested in facilitating processes and dance performances, highlighting things like a dancer's autonomy as performers and creators of their own performance. And I'm particularly interested to hear about that, particularly in working with dancers with intellectual disabilities. So, yeah, I mean, I think this kind of work, as Riina says, takes time and does not always fit into the conventional ways of working and performing in the dance field. So I'm going to hand over to Riina to tell us a little bit about this work.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, everybody, for being here and listening my work. That when I'm telling you about my work, and I'm here in Kauhajoki, where my parents live, and I just managed to get the home or the house to myself, so my family is away for this meeting, so nobody's bothering me or asking any questions. But yeah, I will share you. I think I was thinking that how should I tell about my work? And I decided to tell a little bit about the history, how everything has evolved. And because I'm not native speaker, so I have slides with me, and I will share my screen with the slides. So can you see it now? Good. So as Lian already told, that I have been working with the same dancers since 2014. This Ihanat Dance group that I'm directing, it started from Käpylä Comprehensive School. So there was a workshop, integrated dance workshop by Philip Channels from Australia, and we did the project in this Käpylä Comprehensive School, and there one teacher asked me if I could give dance classes, after school dance classes, to the pupils who are in the extended curriculum, so they are with special needs or with disabilities. And the classes are still going on. I'm not teaching them anymore, but the Ihanat Dance group kind of started to form around this after school dance classes. I think I will show some videos in the end, so I will go through the slides. So Ihanat Dance Company has been going on since 2016. We performed for the first time in 2016. And this picture where I'm with Minttu, one of the dancers, is from the walking performance that we were part of. So there was a choreographer, Sari Palmgren, who was doing a walking performance, and it was like community art based project, and she asked us to participate, and we were performing there twice, 2017 and 2018. So we have been performing in many places, on stages and in the woods. So we have done many things. And then I have, with the Ihanat dancers, I always try to create spaces where they can kind of be the specialists in dance. So I involved them into this artist residency, which I did in the same school, Käpylä Comprehensive School. And they were like my assistant teachers and tutors for the younger students. And in this, I was like very consciously trying to create spaces where they can be the experts and sharing their knowledge in dance. So that was one which took place in 2016. Then here are some pictures of the films that we just made last year. So in the blue dress, there is Vappu. She's now 22 years old, and this trilogy, dance film trilogy, Generation Z, was partly due to COVID, we decided to do separate films. So Vappu is performing in blue, and in the down here in the black dress is Sofia performing. And we, Elisa and me, my colleague, we are kind of the supporting dancers for Vappu, Sofia, and Minttu. Minttu is in this upper right corner, like doing a trio with me and Elisa. So I come strongly from the community dance practice. So I think that is kind of the basis where I come from, and what I also try to kind of implement in the work that we do together. So François Matarazzo has this definition between participatory art and community art. And I think our work falls into this community art section. So we are co-creating with, and the dancers are like not participating in something that I have already created or I have had in mind. So I think that is the kind of the basis where we come from, or where we start to create. So it is a time-consuming practice. So we haven't really performed like we haven't had very long performances since like practically at all, because I think this way of working takes time, and I don't want them to kind of, don't want them, like, I don't want to push them to perform something that is like I consider artistically important or interesting. So the article that I sent you is also like, I found it very interesting and important from the perspective that I think we still have like different roles with, or I'm having different roles with the dancers. So for me, it's very important to kind of create spaces for them to kind of express like whatever they want to express. So I think I work with them, I have a different roles. I might be directing their performances, or I might be acting as a dramaturge, or then I just like facilitate the creative process, or like create performative spaces for them. And then I also like consider myself being a co-dancer or co-choreographer, in a sense that I kind of assist and support their like creative processes. And maybe now I could show you some like films if you are interested. So I try, because I was thinking that maybe it would be also like interesting to see how we have been working. And now you can see them, the dancers, when they were like really young. So the first film is from the 2017. So this is from the school where everything have kind of started here. And as you can see that we have been working quite a lot outdoors. And then, so this was like part of our regular dance class. And then we had a film like cinematographer who came to film the class. So we were celebrating the spring. And this is from one performance that we did in 2018. So that was a short trailer from the performance that we had. And now I'm just the last one that I want to share. No, is it here? Here is the kind of when we were doing the film project, we rehearsed with camera. So we had a camera moving with us. So we saw ourselves in the picture. And this is from the film that we did last. This is Mintu. So in the film, in the last film, Mintu was very interested about seeing herself in the picture. So we started to rehearse in a way that we were always having the camera facing us, that she can kind of see where she is and position us in the picture as she wished. So those were the films. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Riina. I'm sure there are going to be a million questions, and if nobody minds, I'm going to start off with a question for you. So I'm interested in your search to create a way of working where you never impose any kind of dance language or movement. So how would, do you have a class? Do you have a training space? How does that look? If you can just talk us through that.
Yeah, maybe that's not like exactly what I do. We really have a technique classes, but I try to kind of separate that from the creating performances. So that is kind of the basis that we work. I use a lot of improvisation tasks, but then I also use contact improvisation quite a lot. And also like the floor work that we do. That is kind of I think that is the movement vocabulary that they can use if they wish. But when we start creating performances, then I'm quite that the ideas and the movement material come from the dancers. So I think this is kind of the background thing that they can choose from if they wish.
Okay, so there is a space to negotiate kind of some shared language and some stretching and some kind of that can be accessed as a resource down the line if they choose it. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Can I open that up to any other questions? I've got lots more, but does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask Riina about the work? Yvette?
I don't have a question. I want to say that I just love the joyfulness. There was an incredible amount of joy, and the interaction out in a physical environment really struck me as powerful, where people moved in ways that felt more free than maybe in a studio space. So maybe there's something there about the spaces you work and how that evokes or facilitates even people's own movement. So it's just something that struck me when I was watching those videos of how there was a kind of lack of self-consciousness in in the movement in the natural world? And is that so? Is there a kind of easier movement than studio work?
Yeah, we have been working quite a lot outdoors. So we do a lot of like rehearsing outdoors, and I think the environment in itself proposes so much. So maybe there is this that you forget that you are dancing when you interact with the environment, and I think that is their special skill, that we have been doing it so much. So it is not like any special thing for us to go outdoors, but I would really say that the environment affects a lot what they do.
Thanks, Riina. Jessie, I think you had a question. Jessie Brett.
Yeah, I was thank you for sharing. It's really beautiful, your work, and I love the I love that they lead it. And I really love that. But my question is like, how is it? So I guess you've known these people for 10 years or more, and like, how is, because I've never, like, that's kind of a dream to be able to like work with people from that age up, and like, and to really be with them, and to like, like, yeah, really get to know them and really like train and together. And I just wanted to kind of, I just love to hear a little bit about that and about the journey, from beginning to end kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's quite privileged to work with same people for such a long time. And it was also a conscious choice from me. So I decided that, okay, I will be with these people as long as they want to be with me, in a way. And it was also like nice to see the transition from being a dance teacher to be now the collaborator in the artistic processes. And for me, we always created performances from the beginning. They had their first solos. So every rehearsal included solos or duets or trios. And that was kind of I think that was from my side, I established that as a way of working. So we were like always working towards a performing to other people. And then it was nice because I didn't probably mention that I'm collaborating with Elisa, my colleague. She's a bit younger and she got involved in 2018. And then last year she's been teaching the regular classes. And now when we have came together again, I really see that it was necessary change to have that I'm not the teacher anymore. So it was also like very nice that, of course, we were doing like artistic stuff together, but the regular classes were instructed by Elisa. So then I had a possibility to have a slightly different relationship with them. But now I really feel that the way we work, or for me, it was super important to kind of create the space for them to express themselves. So now we are like, I think, more interacting in the aesthetic, like in the aesthetic realm too, that we are really negotiating about these choices that we made together. So first I was more kind of trying to find ways for them to, or I was proposing things for them, how they could like express what they had to express. And now I feel that we are more like having this dialogue, like that maybe could we do this? And what do you think if I propose you this? And yeah, especially with the older dancers.
Riina, I'm fascinated because I think it's maybe a language thing, but also a conceptual thing. I'm not sure where it starts and where it ends, but I know particularly American scholars always make a very strong distinction between what they call community arts and what they call professional arts. And I'm not sure where I sit with it. It's really just a query, and I'm wondering. It's something that I notice, particularly as one starts to work in integrated dance practice, and particularly when one was working with dancers with intellectual disabilities. Most of the choreographers or facilitators or co-creators who are working in this area are very quick to say the work's community work. And I'm wondering if this is, you know, I'm not even sure what I'm asking, but I'm wondering, is there a hierarchy around what we constitute as community-based work and what we constitute as professional work? And why, when we work in integrated or disability arts, are we so quick to always say, oh, it's community-based work? And I think I ask that question of myself a lot. You know, I ask it a lot, you know, where you're aware, you know, and I've said it before, parents come to you or family members afterwards and say, thank you so much for what you're doing. And it's, you know, it's great, but I always consider it to be like the worst comment to get at the end of a performance, because I feel like I want to say, I'm not a social worker. I want you to see your child as an artist, or your daughter, your friend, your sister, your brother, your partner. And I'm just wondering, you know, it's just, again, I don't have a solution. I just want to tweak out, you know, that your calling, you know, working because in that field of community arts. And is it a useful separation? Is it a separation that comes from a particular space? Anyway, those are my thoughts. Interested, you know.
Yeah, that's also my background. I think there is an ethical and philosophical questions, like conceptual questions that are related to that. And for me, I don't see the hierarchy between the professional, like in that sense, but I kind of use the community dance and community art because I think there is a radical potential in it. So it has this historical root of being very political art movement. And I want to kind of keep that in mind. And this is why I kind of talk about community art, because I feel that there is this possibility or potential to do things differently also in the professional stage work. So if I keep that kind of in mind, that because all of the dancers that I collaborate with, they haven't had a professional dance training. Well, they have had a training with me and so on, but they haven't entered any professional training. So for me, that kind of, I think that is also there is a huge possibility to do things differently because they are not trained professionally. So they are not carrying the same kind of like conventions or like ideas that how you should do things on stage. And that is kind of why I tend to emphasize the community work. And I think it might be very particular here in Finland because there is a very strong community dance history, and a lot of dance artists have been like working for very, very many years, like 30 years in inclusive dance, but they like identify themselves as community dance artists. I don't know if that's kind of.
No, I mean, I think it's fascinating. I think maybe also the use of the word community is context driven. And I really loved your the idea of using the term to open up the concept of radical engagement. You know, so thank you. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that discussion around. I see Sydney's got her hand up.
There's also a comment in the chat from Jess.
Okay. So let's Sydney, and then we can take Jess's comment.
So I was just gonna, I do have a question for Riina later because I just came from an Ihanat performance. But I think also the interesting thing is that like Riina is saying that in Finland, a lot of people are working in community dance, but also professional choreographers and companies are also using non-professional dancers in professional pieces in Finland. Like, what's the new piece, Riina, by that choreographer? She's using older they're not dancers, older folks. It's coming up in
Do you mean Susanna Leinonen? Yeah.
who's like a very famous choreographer
Mhm.
here and does not do community work, right? That's
No.
not her thing in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. So like it's very, as an outsider in Finland, it's very interesting because there's that work and they're getting like lots of money from what it seems like to me. And also from what I understand, they don't pay their dancers because they're not professional. So like they're not doing community work and they're not paying their dancers and they're getting a lot of money for projects. But then there's also like a lot of people that do community dance and there's like a big folk dance scene here. And so I think that like those two, I haven't figured it out, Leanne, but it's very different.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I have
mean,
to say, I pay my dancers. They
Yeah.
always get the same
Yeah.
fee.
Which then I think like the question for me, Riina, as like an outsider then is like, what then is it then community dance? Like, and is it like really, as Leanne's saying, is there like really this line, especially when like a really big name choreographer doesn't even pay her dancers and has like ridiculous schedules from what I've heard. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to bring in the economics because that's also a really interesting thing around, what you've raised, Sydney. Does community mean you don't have to pay your dancers? Because I don't know. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation. And, I want to go to Jessie's comment. And she says here, let me just find it. Is the hierarchy potentially linked to the use of art, drama, dance, music therapies in relation to disabled people and rehab, rather than thinking of it as a job we could do? And I think, yeah, I think that's really interesting, and that's what I'm thinking, like maybe it's, I think I like what Riina's suggesting, this kind of returning to the radicalization root of what constitutes community. Because it seems to me, if you've worked with those dancers for that long a time, they are professional. I mean, they are trained. They've had a long period of training. They don't train in the way that we historically understand training, but they are trained. They are doing professional work because they are getting paid. And so, I mean, is the payment the issue? I don't know. So, yeah, it's interesting for me, I don't know if anyone wants to add any more to that discussion. Megan, I see Megan's hand up.
Yeah, just as you were sort of mentioning there, Leanne, about that element of, and Riina, you said that there's so much possibility that comes with the fact that people aren't trained in the way that the industry trains people. And that's something I've been thinking about from an acting point of view. So much ends up being about, this is just how you do it because someone taught me that when I was, however old, and now that's just how we do it. So I think that's a really exciting way to think about working with people who have a different way in. And I guess if I add a question to it, I know it's kind of part of the conversation, but were there moments particularly early on or just in general, I guess, where you were taken aback by something you'd come to see as like a normal part of dance training, and then it was successfully challenged and that sort of stayed with you? Or moments like that, where examples of moments where you've gone, oh yeah, that insight or that outsider quote unquote eye, because they haven't had this fixed vision of what dance looked like, that's really given this project something, or given your creative process something.
Well, I think they are like constantly present when we practice. The moments that I get caught with that, okay, there is something happening here that wouldn't necessarily be if we would be all like the same way trained dancers.
And Jessie's raising in the chat the idea that if kind of like a repertoire, you know, that you get training on the job, you know. I mean, I'm also interested, you know, as Megan brings that in, but I'm also, you know, like I know the first generation of African choreographers, and maybe even second and third, but a lot of them didn't come to dance through any kind of formal dance training. I mean, I think of someone like Adedayo in Nigeria was an acrobat. He was, you know, he was a traditional dancer and an acrobat working kind of, you know, I think of people like, you know, Jermaine Okoni, who was an athlete. She was trained, she went to, you know, I kind of taught by sports at school, you know, and I think of someone like Joseph Tebandeka, who also was came to dance through sport. And so it's an interesting thing around training that kind of that Western notion of, you know, you start when you're 5 and you do these many classes and then you focus and you do repetition and you know, and then you get there. It's something that I found quite interesting because also in the context of South Africa, you know, certainly when I started dancing, when I started training and started flatfoot, there were really no spaces that Black dancers could go for this training. It was all racially segregated. So in order to start a dance company, you know, you kind of relied on people being fit and healthy and well and a will to do the work, you know, and then slowly you started to see, as you worked in the room and you started to play around with certain things, what started to come out. So there's a kind of also a creation of technique or a creation of bringing in other stuff. But, and I think the thing that, you know, when I look at your work, Riina, and those beautiful play in those outside spaces, I know certainly working with the dancers with intellectual disabilities that we do, there are constantly surprises in the sense that there are choices made around movement that I would never have made. And suddenly there's a recalibration of thinking and a recalibration of what constitutes training. And at the end of the day, I don't know, I mean, sort of going, I think training is just repetition, really. You know, it's just hours and hours of repetition of the same thing. I mean, if you're going to be a runner, you just run and run and run. You know, if you're going to be a dancer, you do whatever style that you're doing when you know, I think for acting as well, it's that endless voice work and, you know, blocking and whatever. So it's kind of like a repetition, and the repetition is really at the heart of any kind of technical training. And that repetition, then I think in a way, I loved what you said, is that there's a language that the dancers can draw on when they go and start to play. There's things that they have that they can work with, which I find fascinating. So, and I mean, like we all love to talk, you know, the discussions around improvisation are so huge on the African continent, and we speak about improvisation as the kind of new decolonial way of thinking about dance, but improvisation is never in a I always found those arguments very uncomfortable, because improvisation comes from spaces, you know, either it's kids playing, or improvisation comes from someone who's got choices to make and has a kind of sensory ethnography in their body, you know. So yeah, and I always kind of think of Merce Cunningham, you know, when he kind of very, very critically said that improvisation is the kind of the start of habit, you know, and was very said it's, you know, so it's interesting. So thank you for that, and thank you, Megan, for that, for raising that as well. I don't know if anyone's got also any questions for Jessie Brett. I mean, Jessie, I'd love to ask as well with you, you know, also working with mixed abilities. What is, you know, we saw your a little bit of your floor, your work, but I'd be interested to know a little bit about your sense of training, or yeah, I'm going to call it that, use that word.
So yeah. So I've like my experience or how I work in the room. Like, do you want to know how I work when I'm in a room like that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not very great with words. So yeah, I don't have the kind of language that a lot of you have. But yeah, it depends. So one of the dancers that you saw, I've had a long-term relationship with him in terms of dance. Like, he's been working with us in my work since 2014. And I am, and really I was, but occasionally I drop in. I'm a movement tutor for Hijinks Theatre. They're not a dance, they're an acting training, but I'm a movement, like they have lots of people coming and teaching them movement. So yeah, so with him, it was very tentative when we're not tentative when I get really great people in the room. So everybody is really aware of kind of how we're working. And everybody's super supportive and very mature and very like in it for the group. Like we always feel like we're a family. So Andrew really kind of, he had this kind of acting training. So he had this, a way in, and then I give like parameters so that like things can be improvised within a structure. A lot of the time I don't often work with like unison movement. I might do occasionally, but like, yeah, it's more like we're a shared body and we're all really in tune with one another. And yeah, like for example with Andrew, like I would make sure in the beginning, they had a really clear pathway of like a person like to be with, and then to be part, like, and then like very clear like pathways and like qualities to work with. So yeah, and then the other two, we call it neurodiverse here, I think, in the UK, but as the words change. They were that was the first time I danced with them. So I had Uma, who is their teacher, a bit like you, very similar to you, Riina. She was with them with me. So I had her as like really to be there to look after them, not to look after them, but to kind of hold that space, because I had a lot of people in the room, and to just help, but they didn't really, they were really great. And then with the physical disabilities, I mean, yeah, Joe, who I had in that space, he's a professional. So I had like, that's the first time I'd worked with him. I was trying to find local dancers to work with. But I work a lot with improvisation and quality and feeling and yeah, that kind of thing. So I think it's just the way that I work, it just kind of works. I don't know if I'm articulating myself very well.
No, totally. And I loved the idea of the clear pathways. So thank you. And I know that Sydney had her hand up. I don't know if Sydney, you want to do. Thanks, Jessie. Beautiful.
I had a question both for Riina and Jessie. So Jessie, I was wondering, so we still teach online quite often, and I also do rehearsals online as well. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about a little bit about this weird translation, or I don't even know what you would even call it when you're, working through Zoom or a virtual space, and how you think that impacts or is generative for your classes, or if there's any strategies that you use.
So what you saw was just a one-off thing. It was I did 3 sessions, 3 days, or 3 kind of session, 3 afternoons. And I only did like a little warm up, and then that was the warm up that you saw where I actually taught. And then for that project, there was a lot of so I had a facilitator in Ethiopia who I was working more deeply with, really explaining the tasks and everything, and then she was so it was like she was explaining them she would explain the task to Betty, who's the equivalent of me in that space. Then Betty would translate it in the movement, like, so she, because I was working with Adom, who's not a dancer. She was dancing there, but she's not like a and then it was worked out. But I have done when I was living in Ethiopia, I've done I did an online, like a streamed show. So I had dancers in Ethiopia, dancers in Wales, like Andrew is one of them, and dancers in a dancer in Spain and a dancer in England, because we were all everywhere. And I mean, it was amazing what we could generate through what we could do. We created this 40-minute piece which was live streamed, which was beautiful. But there are limitations, like like you have to be simple, like you have to, I find simplicity and stripping things back is always really good, not to struggle with things, just to go with the things which come through easily. But I don't have huge amounts of experience, so you could probably teach me. Yeah.
And Riina, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. I know that you did so much video work and you showed us so much of your video work, but I just saw Ihanat, both the videos and also them performing live. And so I'm wondering if there's different practices that you use when you're making dance for film and making dance for live performance. I find that as a artist, I'm not very good with like thinking about like a different practice for dance for film.
Okay, good question. I was like, ooh, is there like a huge difference? I think the way we worked for the films, I think we because you can choose where you focus on when you work for the film. So then there was a possibility to kind of, Vappu, the dancer, is very skillful with her hands. They are very expressive hands. So then it was like possibility to kind of focus on that when we practiced for the film. So we kind of choose some elements from their dances, which were like very strong, which they kind of liked, and which were like also works well for the film. So I think that was one in Vappu's piece. And then also like with Sofia, she's so fascinated about show wrestling. So I think we were first trying to make that as a stage performance, but luckily then COVID came and our plans changed. And then actually we kind of understood that this works better for the film, like kind of you can have these effects that you wouldn't have on the stage performance. So then it also, like, I think the medium kind of changed what we were focusing on. But I think that there was not that big difference in what we they were still kind of doing their own stuff. But then we were like kind of making proposals to what to focus on.
Yvette, your hand is up.
Thank you. I'm also interested, Jessie, in your work in terms of literal language. So when you're working in Ethiopia, are you working with the translator in the space? Or and how does that affect the work? Or do you work when you're in the room? Are you working just in an embodied way, not worrying too much about language?
So no, I didn't have a translator, but by the end, like by that time, I had basic Amharic, so I can speak like, I mean, I don't know, it's been a while since I've been there, so, but by the time, yeah, like by the time I was, yeah, I can speak basic Amharic, so like I can communicate, like there are kind of also what, because I was working in the dance like the dance world with like Adunya and Destino and all these different companies and people for like 10 years or more, like you kind of pick up, I probably knew more dance words than other words, but then there's people who speak little bits of English in the group, so it would just be a negotiation between between us, and then kind of, like gabachu, like, do you understand? And then like, do they understand? Yes, well, let's see if you understand. So yeah, but by the end it was really easy. Oh, I tell a lot, like in the beginning, I didn't set it up alone, so I set it up with a dancer called Dawit Seto in Ethiopia, who now lives in Switzerland, I think. So in the very beginning I had him, but then we were teaching separately, so yeah, it didn't really, he would lead one day and I would lead another day, so yeah, but in the end it was just me and and my Amharic. But that was an amazing process because it felt so good, to go from not understanding, not being able to speak, to being able to like communicate. It changed my life there dramatically. Yeah, the language.
I mean, because there is something about the fact that the embodied performance is another language anyway. So, I mean, even when someone gives directions, there's translation happening. I thought Cyrile's comment in the chat was really interesting, where she talks about maybe technique classes are the power of a shared language. Technique is creating that shared language. So I'm really interested in that notion of language in the studio space, because there's verbal language, there's embodied language, and then there's various translation processes. And then, of course, when you've got different bodies, they're having to make their own meaning as well. And maybe another language, which, Jiling's here, she works with Deaf Gain, where there's another whole process of creating work in another language as well. So, I think language is a really interesting thing around the work. But I love Cyrile's idea of creating a shared language. And I think that's what you're all doing somehow in your classes. So, thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Jessie. And I see Cindy's got her hand up.
Yes, I wanted to ask Riina, you were saying about your work that you use a lot of contact in the work that you do. And I'm just curious because I do as well with the groups that I work with and the places that I've gone and taught. And I'm just wondering how that shifted for you during COVID, but then also since then, like, because that's a whole language unto itself, and it was so important to my work, and I've found it really challenging, really difficult in the last few years to basically come up with variations when people can't make physical contact. I'm just wondering, I'd love to hear how you have navigated that the last few years with that practice.
Yeah, I think during the COVID years, we didn't have practices that we practiced together. So we all the dancers had individual practices. So then there was a lesser contact with it, and I think I think it's getting more it is more problematic at the moment to use the contact. But then because we are we are kind of a company, so then we also do that among ourselves, but in the teaching I'm not using that much anymore, because I think it is kind of, it's a sad thing, but then there are ways to, because I think especially when working with kids with intellectual disability, that touching is can be challenging, and it's also like the way, like we usually like I talk about contact improvisation, but we use a lot of these mirroring exercises that you mirror from the distance, and then you kind of come closer to your partner, and then you end up with the contact. But I think so we have been keeping this mirroring exercise and this flock that we use quite a lot of, this flocking exercise that you follow one's movement and everybody is doing it on the same way. So I think those are the ones that you can still use without the contact thing. Yeah. But how have you kind of found ways to work with contact?
Well, I've noticed it's really changed people's perception of space in a huge way, and how they navigate the space in the room, but also the space between one another. So I've been trying to reinforce the idea that although we're not in physical contact, we're still connected, and we're still very much a part of the same dance, all of us. So I suppose in an abstract way, I've been trying to encourage that kind of perception of us in the room together when we're not able to. But I'd still use it a little bit. I really, it depends on the group hugely, because you can tell whether or not they're going to be able to work with it or not. But I would do very simple things, and maybe things where they're not face to face.
Yeah.
Side to side, back to back, feet to feet, you know, so there's still sometimes a bit of distance. I think it's the face to face and coming really close in that still people are very nervous about.
Yeah, that's true. But I also use the back to back quite a lot, and side by side, because I think that having the other body there is so strong and powerful.
It is very powerful. Yeah. Thank you. That's great to hear.
I think I don't know if there are any further questions. I'm just so grateful for these conversations. They just spark so much thought and just a kind of clarity around thinking around practice. So I'm really, really grateful. I'm wondering, I see we've got about 15 minutes left. And, I think if there are no more questions, and if Yvette also feels it's okay, it would be lovely just to ask Cindy just, maybe 5-6 minutes to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Ireland, and to kind of, I know you, but maybe just to kind of give a sense of who you are and where you're working, and just a little sharing if you're up for it.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Thank you. Right. This is always like, where do you start with these things? How far back do you go? My background in movement is through athletics. So I didn't come through dance training. I came through sports and a very sporty family. And I've been working with inclusive dance for quite a long time. Actually, my first teacher, Lito Alessi, was starting his practice in danceability when I was working with his company, with himself and Karen Nelson. So I kind of touched on it and then went away from it and came back and went away. And in the last 10 years or so, it's really become much more a core part of my practice. I work with two particular groups or organizations here in Ireland. One is a very new course that's just started since last year called Inclusive Dance Cork. And I can actually give you a link. It's a new training course for people who want to learn how to teach inclusive dance. This year, because of funding largely, it started quite late. And so it's been condensed from January to May of this year. And what it is a practical course that happens once a month for 2 days, generally a Sunday and a Monday. And there's a teacher that comes in to work with the students. And then there's also generally a Zoom kind of lecture with someone like Adam Benjamin or someone like that, you know. And so that by the end of it, you can choose when you sign up to the course to either get university credits, or you can just take it for the joy of taking it. But there are exams for everyone at the end of it, and you do end up, everyone ends up with a certificate. So this is just the second year of this course. I'm just going to put a link down here. And like I said, it's just started. So I'll be teaching on the May section of the course. And the course is really interesting, I think, partly because it's people with intellectual disabilities, but also physical disabilities. So just put everybody together. And also then people who are able-bodied or, you know, somewhere along the scale or spectrum. So there's that group that I work with, and then I work with, as it's Ireland, and theatre is the main practice here in terms of performance. I work with a theatre company, a professional theatre company called Equinox, and I've been working with them for about 6 years as the movement director, choreographer, but it's evolving towards what you were talking about, Riina, where it's becoming much more of a kind of collaboration. Because now that they've been training with me for all this time, and they had theater training even before that, it really is, the lines are quite blurred a lot of times between our roles. And Equinox, I'll put a link to them. Equinox is organized and works out of an art center called KCAT Arts Center, where I work. So I'll just put that link there. Equinox just celebrated its 15th birthday as a theatre company. So we had a big celebration in Dublin, and we had a 2-day National Inclusive Theatre Symposium. So it was workshops, panel discussions, and a big birthday cake. So yeah, I guess those are, yeah, that's kind of in general. As Leanne said, that I've been down to Sabiqua in Johannesburg twice now for the Body Moves Festival, which has been really great. And this year I was brought in as primarily as a facilitator. So every morning I was collected and taken to a different school in Johannesburg and worked with the young people. And it was terrifying and it was thrilling because I never quite knew how many and how much and what the room was going to look like, or if there was a sound system, and is there electricity, and what's going on. And it was all just like, it was a huge adventure, and I actually loved it. I loved the edginess of it, of having to walk in a room and just like make decisions really quickly and figure out how to do things. So I had a brilliant time. I loved that they brought me in as a facilitator this last year, and I hope next year that we'll be able to, or now in 2024, we'll be able to do it again. So yeah, that's it, really.
Thank you, Cindy. It's really lovely to have you with us, and your years of experience are so valued. So I'm going to hand it over to Yvette. I think we've kind of come to the end of today's session, and just really on my side, thanking you all. I think one of the things that I value so much about this space is that it's a place to really ask easy and difficult questions in a way that we are all here to serve the kind of higher purpose of creating dance that is really about everybody. And for me also as a choreographer on a journey to find new ways of working, which is a constant journey, and new ways of thinking and conceptualizing. So I'm very grateful for this space as well. And also today, particularly grateful for the conversations that really challenge hierarchies of disabilities, you know, that so very grateful for that. So really thanking Riina and thanking Jessie for sharing, and for really, you know, becoming part of the family in a way, and also just kind of really helping us to see you and to see the work that you do. And thank you also, Cindy, for sharing, and I hope we can hear more about your work at a later time. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Yvette.
Thank you. I reiterate the thanks to you, and how you're opening up areas that we maybe don't know about. Like I only knew a little bit about Ethiopia, learning a lot more. But also putting in conversation various kinds of disability. We're looking forward to, in our next session, hearing from Daniel and the work that he's been doing with again, intellectual but older people as well, and that's really interesting, his work, and other people that we've been making contact with. So it's very exciting, and like I said, there were people today that said they'd really like to be here, but they will be watching this. So there are other people that are engaging with the work, even though they're not in the room. But we love that there are people that are more often than not in the room, and that's wonderful. It builds trust as well, and these conversations and sharing. And if people would like to share something or raise an issue, question, just drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. And Riina, I personally want to thank you for this article on being the researcher's role, particularly around the intellectual disability. That's a real challenge, where you don't speak for someone. How do you work collaboratively, not just in the studio, but in the research space? How do you write with others? And one of the things that Leanne and I are finding in our work, in our own project that's also part of this, is how little has been written about amazing choreographers and companies, and how, although we are trying to tell those stories, we're trying to tell them from the perspective of the artists and not speak for them, and have their own voices speaking. And I think that's what this does. It allows people to express what they do. And I think it's often hard, as Jessie said, you know, words are not her medium primarily, you know, movement is. So maybe you want to dance your story, but the academy has a very particular way of hearing stories, and that also needs to be deconstructed. You know, there's a very particular way of writing academically that is not kind to people whose stories we are necessarily telling. So I think that's another conversation that we need to think about. And the reading I found very provocative and helpful. So thank you for that as well. So I'm going to say thank you and good evening to everybody, wherever you are, or maybe it's morning for some, Sydney. But wherever you are in your day, I hope it's a glorious time. We look forward to seeing you in April for our next session. Thank you.
Thank you.